Speed. I am speed. What a great quote to start us off with a conversation about talking about one of the fastest character builds in all of Dungeons and Dragons. But, at least for me, I'm going to put a little twist on this whole conversation. Because by this point, I think we've all seen the fastest character build. Different versions of it, different combinations of classes and stat boost. I think we can all figure out how fast we can make a character in Dungeons and Dragons. But how fast are they compared to the fastest monster in Dungeons and Dragons? This idea came to me during a conversation I was having over on a Discord server, where we were having this long drawn out conversation about how fast we can make a character. Talking about its build, what class, what race, and just all sorts of things. And then I interjected with the stats that come with the fastest monster in Dungeons and Dragons. And so I figured, this would make a good video for YouTube. We could use some more content. So what I'm gonna do today is take a already built character that is ridiculously fast, and then compare that to the monster that I'm picking out, that I have mapped out is the fastest based on movement speed. So real quick, as for a reference, I'm going to be using Min-Max Munchkin's The Bullet creation as a reference, and then I'm going to compare that with the monster that I've chosen. So, I would advise you go and watch the video, since it's his creation. He's probably better at explaining it than myself. But, if you don't feel like going to watch that video, I will just as easily go over just the basic stuff that you need to know about how fast this thing can go. The first thing that you have to remember is, or getting into the character creation, he went with a Tabaxi with 2 levels in Fighters, 2 levels in Wizard Bladesinger, 2 levels in Monk, and then 14 levels in Artificer Alchemist. He has the Zeus that, with the base Tabaxi speed of 30 feet, adding on to the spell Longstrider an additional 10 feet, the Swiftness Elixir adds another 10 feet, Unarmored Movement adds another 10 feet, an activation of Blade Song adds another 10 feet, the feat Mobile adds another 10 feet, then the Epic Boon adds an additional 30 feet, which, without the other magical enhancements, that's already a base 80 feet or 9 miles per hour, with a grand total of 100 feet or 12 miles per hour. After adding in the multipliers of feline agility, haste, and then boost of speed that we got from our Artificer class, we get an additional times 8 modifier, which boosts the movement speed up to 880 feet or 100 miles per hour. After going into combat and doing all of the actions required, we got our movement, our dash action, our bonus action to dash from the Monk, Step of the Wind, the haste action that comes from casting haste on ourselves, action surge that comes from the fighter, Dissonant Whispers reaction movement, which is based on a little trick that he used, and we get a grand total of 6 times 880, which equals 5,280 feet in a single round. That also equals 600 miles per hour. Oh, well, that was a lot to say in one instance. But with that all said, I would like to keep some things in mind. For example, the epic boon of speed is not an option that is available to the race, class, or background. It is only accessible once you as the player reaches level 20 and if the DM gives it to you. So it's not really an option that you need to it's not an option that is relatively available to you. So that's like 30 feet of speed reduced from your base speed. There's some other things you have to consider, like the fact that you have to spend a couple of turns casting Long Strider, drinking the Swiftness Elixir, casting Blade Song. There's just a lot of other stuff you need to prep before you're even able to get to those ridiculous speeds in the first place. So assuming that the total base speed is 80, if you remove 30, that will get us to 50 feet, which is about right, give or take 50 feet. You got the mobile, and then unarmored movement. Yeah, 50 seems about right. That changes a lot, but it still gets you pretty darn fast, all things considered. What could possibly beat this out? Well, let's talk about the monster in question, the Kirin. The Kirin is a celestial monster found in Volo's Guides to Monsters on page 163. Is a huge celestial creature, lawful good, and it is the fastest monster that I could find in printed Dungeons & Dragons as of this recording. Its base movement speeds include 60 feet if it was walking, and a hover speed of 120. That means that when it dashes, it has a grand total of 240 movement in a given round. However, that's not all. The Kirin is also a legendary monster with legendary actions. It has the ability Move, which gives it half its movement speed without provoking an attack of opportunity, which means that's an additional 180 feet of movement, which gives us a grand total of 420 feet in a given round. That is, in total, 48 miles per hour. Now hold on, I'm not quite done yet. The Kirin also has the spell Windwalk as an at-will spell it can cast, and that spell reads that you can get that all who are affected now have their movement speed, their base movement speed, now equal 300 feet. But they can only use their action to dash. So adding all of that up, that means it can reach up to 600 feet in a round, or 68 miles per hour. Now, as the spell reads, it implies that the Kirin cannot use its legendary action. But, assuming that we can, that means that the Kirin could now have an additional 450 movement speed on top of the 600 that it gets from dashing, which means that comes around 1,050 feet, or 119 miles per hour. Ah, jeez. Now these are pretty fast all things considered, especially in the time frame that we're looking at in the Dungeons and Dragons settings. But this class is still ridiculously faster than the Kirin. Even if we removed all of the stuff that is probably more situational, like the epic boon speed, and if we take away some of the more prep stuff, we could still be looking at some pretty ridiculous speeds. Not to mention, when you compare the turn economy versus the Kirin, there's no competition here. There's just too much that the class by Min-Max Munchkin, it just outpaces the Kirin, and by a large margin. But even still, I would still say that the Kirin has an upper hand, mostly because a lot of its speed comes from just its innate abilities without any prep time. Though I will say that if it was like a race versus the one playable character and just the Kirin, that does mean that the Kirin technically only gets one legendary action to make that move. So, yeah. Breakneck speeds, just all across the board. I do want to make a disclaimer, though. I was looking through the Dungeon Master's Guide prior to this, and on page 18 in the Monster Manual, there you'll find the Solar, the most powerful angel, at least as far as the Monster Manual is concerned, and it has a max base movement speed of 150 feet while flying, and has legendary actions to teleport up to an additional 120 feet. I didn't add that because I felt like teleportation was an entirely different thing compared to just raw speed. But we had a very fun discussion regarding just this. This probably isn't the fastest a creature can go, as fast as a player character can make. And I'm very curious to see like how fast that actually is. Maybe my math is wrong, and maybe the Kirin still beats out this alchemic monk fighter wizard thing. But whatever the case may be, I just thought this would be a fun video to edit and make. A fun conversation was had here, and who knows, I would like to make something like this again with maybe a better structure, better focus, but whatever comes, I will hope to see you again sometime later.